Saltwater Orchard, Chapter 15, Richard. Church had not been on Richard's to-do list this morning. He'd watched Ryan and Erica leave every Sunday, but he'd never felt the desire to join them. When Erica had skipped into the kitchen this morning and asked him to go, he'd surprised even himself when he'd agreed. Shifting in the hard wooden pew, he glanced around to see if he knew anyone. His aunt and uncle had brought him to Seaside Chapel during his summers with them. It was the only time he'd attended church. His parents had little faith, so sleeping in on Sundays was the norm. Unlike his aunt and uncle, who had gone every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday evening. The pastor differed from the one he remembered. He recalled an older man with white hair who had delivered his sermons in a booming baritone voice. The man now in the pulpit was younger, not much older than Richard. He had a steady voice, but it wasn't as deep as the previous pastor. But this new pastor delivered his sermon in a way that made him seem more approachable. Even so, he was having a hard time paying attention to what the pastor was saying, not because he wasn't interested, but because Ryan was sitting so close to him. It was distracting. He'd tried to leave plenty of space between the two of them when he sat down, but then one of Erica's friends had wanted to sit with her. Suddenly, he'd found his hip and thigh pressed up against Ryan's in order to make room. He shifted again, trying to gain some space between them and the gorgeous distraction sitting beside him. She leaned into him. He did his best to hold still. "Are you okay?" The soft whisper of words tickled his ear. Turning his head a fraction of an inch, he leaned close, inhaling the scent that screamed Ryan to him. Vanilla and outdoors and coffee. He stopped himself from leaning in further and whispered back, "Yeah, no problem." A throat cleared behind them and he straightened, glancing at Ryan, an apology forming on his lips. She patted his knee as she mouthed, "It's okay." He instantly recalled a time when he'd sat with her before, just like this, during a church service when he had been much younger, and his aunt had nearly boxed his ears for all the whispering back and forth the two of them had done. His aunt never allowed them to sit together after that. As he worked to focus his mind on what the pastor was saying, he felt his shoulders relax a little more. He realized how much he had missed this, learning about God, worshiping, and with Ryan and Erica beside him, he was enjoying it even more. Bringing his focus back to the sermon, he caught the words, "Walk humbly." Richard watched as the pastor moved out from behind the pulpit and began pacing the stage as he continued. Our God doesn't require much. It may seem like there's a long list of do's and don'ts once you accept Christ into your life, but there really isn't. That wasn't what Richard remembered. He seemed to recall long lists of both growing up. Don't have fun, don't listen to rock music, obey your parents, and the list had seemed never-ending. At least that was how it seemed when he'd been a teenager. The pastor paused for a moment, letting the words sink in before resuming. The Westminster Shorter Catechism asks, "What is the chief end of man?" Richard's eyebrows rose at the question. His chief end right now was to save his uncle's farm. He was on his way, but he still had a long way to go. The pastor continued, "And the answer is this. Man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever." Simple enough, right? Chuckles came from a few people in the congregation. Even Richard had to smile briefly before his thoughts turned to how he'd lived his life over the last few years. He hadn't glorified God in anything, least of all in how he'd lived his life. He hadn't even tried to follow the teaching from his youth. It had seemed impossible, so why even bother to try? He shifted again, suddenly uncomfortable. There were things he'd done to get ahead in his career where he hadn't acted honorably. During one of the first summers he spent in Haven, he'd attended vacation Bible school in this very church. It was during one of those times when he'd decided to follow Christ. And yet, when he'd gone home, he fell away from doing anything about it. Sure, he attended church when he was in Haven, but never anywhere else. And now, something seemed to call to him to change that, to change his life, to follow God fully. What would that even look like? It was almost as if the pastor was reading his mind as he continued with the sermon. So, how are we to glorify God? What was Micah trying to convey in this message? We do that by living out Micah 6:8, our primary verse for today. Let me read it to you once more. "He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." His thoughts in a tumble, Richard began to really examine his life. He hadn't been walking humbly or with much kindness until he'd come back to Haven. There was something about this place that made him want to do all that and more. He glanced at Ryan, and someone that seemed to encourage him to be better, even without saying anything. He admired her strength and her integrity. She lived a life just as the pastor had outlined. Pastor Peter continued, "It's simple when it comes right down to it. Micah was telling the nation of Israel how they had failed to follow the Lord's steps in guiding them as a nation. He was reminding them what it would take to follow God, and we should take that same reminder to heart now. The Lord requires us to walk with him, and when we do that, we become more like Christ. And when we become more like Christ, we will yearn for justice and mercy and kindness. If our heart is striving to be like Christ, then we will do our actions. Our chief end is to glorify God, and when we do so, we become more like him. That should be our primary goal in life. Join me in prayer." Richard closed his eyes, but he didn't hear the words. All he could focus on was how his actions hadn't honored Christ, and he very much wanted to do that going forward. As the minister continued with his prayer, he said one of his own to himself. "Lord, forgive me for not following you humbly. Help me to do so from this point forward. I want to know the truth of your ways. Help me. Guide me as I try to save the farm. And if you have plans for Ryan and me, could you let me know? Thanks. Amen." He felt as if an enormous weight had tumbled off his shoulders as he opened his eyes and stood for the last song. He glanced at Ryan as they sang. Was he being presumptuous, asking God to help him with her? He looked up at the pastor. Maybe he should get some advice on how this whole walk humbly thing worked. He pondered the thought as the song swelled around him. "I'll be outside with Josie!" Erica's exclamation brought Richard back to the present. When had the song ended? All around him, people were gathering up their belongings and heading toward the exit. "Coming?" Ryan stood at the end of the pew, looking at him with an eyebrow raised. "In a minute. I need to talk with someone. I'll meet you outside." "You're being a little mysterious." "I'll explain later. Give me 10 minutes?" "Sure." She gave him a quick grin before turning to walk up the aisle. As he sat back down, he stared ahead, lost in thought about the changes he needed to make. His primary concern was how those things might impact his relationship with Ryan. He had realized his relationship with Sloane was never genuine. He had always been playing a role to conform to Sloane's expectations. But now, he craved a genuine connection with someone, where he could express himself freely and authentically, without fear of judgment or rejection. He loved having Ryan and Erica at the farm. He didn't want it to end. The work that had seemed so overwhelming when he had first arrived, he now found enjoyable. Each morning he woke, he looked forward to the day and spending time with her. He hated the days when she worked at the cafe instead. It was too quiet, too lonely. "Hi, I'm Drew. I haven't seen you here before." Startled, Richard looked up at the guy standing in front of him with a hand outstretched. He grasped it, shaking it even as he stood. "I'm Richard Mosley, and it's my first time here." "Well, nice to meet you, Richard. Welcome to Haven and to Seaside Chapel." "Thanks." He opened his mouth. Maybe the guy who led worship could answer his questions for him, but then closed it again. He'd wait for the pastor. Drew asked, "What?" "Nothing," Richard replied. "Are you sure? I'm happy to help if I can." "Well, it wouldn't hurt to get more than one opinion. What does it mean, practically speaking, to walk humbly with God?" Drew ran a hand through his hair and blew out a breath. "It means you ask him to guide you. You don't want to go off doing your own thing without praying about it." "Okay, but do you really pray before you do anything? Wouldn't that just take up too much time?" "You don't have to stop to close your eyes and pray all the time. You can keep your eyes open and go about your life, but you can keep up a conversation with God. Think of it like that, talking with God constantly." The pastor stepped up next to Drew and stretched out his hand. "Hi, I'm Peter." Drew clapped a hand on Peter's shoulder. "Thank goodness. Help me out here, bro. I'm messing this up. This is Richard, by the way." Richard shook the hand Peter extended to him. "Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what you meant by walking humbly with God." "It all starts with one simple question," Peter said. "Are you a believer of Christ and what he did when he came to earth to save us, Richard?" "I am," he said with confidence. "Now what do I do?" The lightness in his spirit almost made him laugh out loud, but he refrained and just let a smile fill his face. "Now you seek to build your relationship with Christ. When you do that, everything else falls into place. It may not be easy, But if you trust God with everything, He'll always show you the way. Any chance I could take you guys out to lunch and talk about this more? I've never turned down a free meal, Drew said. Lead the way. Sure, I'd love to join you, Peter said. Let me just lock up. I can meet you at the Three Cats Cafe in, say, 10 minutes? Perfect. Richard shook both of their hands and headed out the door. He saw Ryan waiting by the car and slowed. Erica squatted nearby, admiring a bug crawling on her finger. He'd just invited the pastor and Drew to lunch, and he'd totally forgotten he'd driven in with Ryan this morning. What an idiot. Well, maybe she wouldn't mind joining them. He smiled as he walked towards them. I hope you don't mind. I just invited Pastor Peter and Drew to come to lunch. Is that okay? Sure, unless it's guy talk. Then Eric and I can sit at another table. I want to sit with Mr. Richard, Erica exclaimed, launching herself at Richard and hugging him around the waist. He laughed down at the little girl. No worries, kiddo. Looking back up at Ryan, he explained, I had some questions about the sermon, and they offered to talk with me about it. I thought the least I could do was offer to buy them lunch, and I'd love for you to join us. In that case, we'd enjoy that. Richard opened the passenger door for Ryan, who slipped inside. He helped get Erica settled into the back before hurrying around to the driver's side. Smiling at her as he slid into the driver's seat, he started the car. He could get used to this, having Ryan and Erica with him, eating out together, almost like a family. His mind continued to whirl with all the fresh revelations in his life. Today felt like a turning point, and he was eager to see what happened next. Chapter 16. Ryan. Order up! In a hurry, Ryan made her way to the counter to pick up the order for table 3. The cafe had been busier than normal today, between Memorial Day weekend and the summer festival that was in full swing, plus the Little League Championship, scheduled for later in the afternoon. On top of everything, they were also short a waitress. It was all hands on deck. She struggled to keep her mind on the job, but she kept thinking back to last Sunday when Richard had grilled Pastor Peter for over an hour on what it meant to live a life for Christ. Every question he asked led to another, and another, and another. Ryan had been content listening to the men talk. It allowed her to study Richard without him being aware of it. He was too engrossed in the discussion with Pastor Peter to notice her. He had even asked to go to church with her again tomorrow. She needed to focus on her job instead of wondering what the implications of his newfound faith might be. Being equally yoked in marriage was crucial, and although her marriage to Eric had ended prematurely, they'd always shared the belief that Christ was fundamental. Setting the plates in front of the couple at the table, Ryan asked, Can I get you anything else? We're all set, thanks. As she turned to walk away, she saw the man reach for the woman's hand. The couple bowed their heads to bless the food before eating. That's what she wanted. Someone to hold her hand and pray with her. Someone to help her raise Erica. She just wanted to feel special to someone. Taking a deep breath, she slipped down the hallway to check on Erica. Her daughter hadn't felt well this morning. There were only a few days left before summer vacation, and she still didn't have a babysitting plan in place other than bringing Erica to work with her. Her daughter's blood sugar had been on a roller coaster today, and Ryan wanted to keep a close eye on her. It was on days like this when she wished for extra help. She wished she had someone to come alongside her and give her a hug, someone who would tell her it would be okay, someone to share the burden with. She opened the door to the office to find Erica stretched out on the couch reading. She turned her head lazily towards her as she entered. Hi, Mommy. Are you done? Not yet, sweetie. I still have a few more hours. How's the book? Erica shrugged. It's okay. I'm hungry. Let's see where you're at first. Her daughter rose and pulled her testing kit out of her backpack. Bringing it to her, she said, You do it. Ryan smiled even as she thought about how this was the life ahead for her little girl. Thousands of blood samples over her lifetime to keep this disease in check. The two bent their heads over the meter. Erica smiled up at her mom after the number on the screen popped up. 70. All right then. How about a grilled cheese sandwich and some broccoli? Mommy, broccoli doesn't go with grilled cheese. She turned her little nose up at the suggestion. Well, what does? Carrots. Ryan hid a smile. No need to argue with her daughter if she wanted to swap one veggie for another. Carrots it is. Come on. She reached out her hand and helped tug her daughter towards the door. Let's go rummage you up some victuals. That's what Ma says to Laura sometimes. Erica skipped alongside her as they made their way to the kitchen. Abigail looked up as they entered. There's my favorite kiddo. What will it be? Grilled cheese, please, and some carrots. The little girl clambered up on the stool Abigail kept for her in the kitchen, folding her hands as she set to wait. Coming right up. Abigail went to get the ingredients for Erica's lunch. Here, drink this while you wait for your food. Ryan handed her daughter a glass of milk, and Erica took a long swallow. She said, "Let me give you your shot, kiddo." She quickly drew up the insulin her daughter would need to cover the carbohydrates in her lunch and drink. She waited for Erica to lift her shirt and push the top of her pants down so that she could access her stomach. Swiping an alcohol wipe over a spot on her stomach, Ryan waved her hand to dry the area. Ready? Yep. Erica closed her eyes tight, and she pushed the needle in and depressed the plunger to give her daughter the life-saving hormone. She had started saying a brief prayer of thanks every time she did it. Thankful for the discovery of insulin. Thankful that her daughter didn't fight her about it. Thankful for so much. Abigail slathered butter on slices of thick bread and laid them on the griddle. She placed thick slices of cheese next. "Are we sticking with the regular grilled cheese, or are we adding anything else, little one?" Abigail asked as she flipped the quickly browning bread. "Just cheese. Don't forget my carrots!" Erica giggled as she sat watching Abigail make her lunch. Ryan loved the sound of her daughter's giggle. "Feel free to send her back to the office to read, Abigail. She doesn't need to stay out here with you." "Oh, I don't mind. I don't see my grandkids as often as I would like. She reminds me of one of my granddaughters. It's always good to have young energy around. It helps make the day go by faster." "If you say so." Ryan couldn't help the sigh that escaped. "I just find it exhausting." Abigail laughed as she finished putting together Erica's lunch. "It can be that too, absolutely." She winked at Ryan. "But that's the part they don't tell you. Being a grandparent can be exhausting, but we get to send them home, so we get a full night's sleep." Ryan forced a laugh. She knew Abigail was just trying to help, but the smile slid off her face. She watched as the woman placed the plate of food in front of Erica, and her little girl bowed her head to say a blessing over it. She loved Erica, and she never regretted having her in her life, not for a single moment. She just wished Eric hadn't died so soon after their marriage. She regretted how he'd never met his daughter, or how he wasn't here now to help her raise Erica. No, if she was honest with herself, she was mad at Eric. Mad at him for leaving her here all alone. Mad at having to raise their daughter without him. "What's wrong, Ryan? Are you okay?" She startled to find Abigail in front of her, concern etched across her face. She placed a hand on her arm, giving it a squeeze. "Oh, just having a pity party. It's nothing," Ryan said. "Want to talk about it?" Sighing once more, she shook her head, but the words spilled out before she could stop them. "It's hard being a single parent." Shrugging her shoulders, she gave the older woman a sad smile. "I just miss having a partner in life." "I can understand that. We're made to be part of a couple. That's how God created it to be from the very beginning. A man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife." "I think I'm just destined to go this alone." Abigail arched an eyebrow at her. "Oh, really? Alone? And who is that handsome man I've been seeing you with? The one little Erica here can't stop talking about?" "Richard? He's leaving once he sells the farm. I'm just helping him get things ready. And he's helping me out of a tough spot." "The tough spot you never told us about. The one where you were living in your car." Abigail's eyes went back up. Yeah, that one." She felt her face redden. "I'm sorry. I thought I had it under control." "Living in an abandoned barn is not having it under control, sweetie. And you take away our blessing when you make those decisions for us. We're called to help each other. It's biblical, dear. So if you're ever in a bind like that again, you'd better ask for help." Ryan loved and hated how these women who owned the cafe could reduce her to feeling like a child in 2 seconds. And yet she knew they did it out of love. "We love you, sweet Ryan. We care about you." Abigail enveloped her in a hug. She closed her eyes and soaked up the feeling of comfort. "Thank you," she whispered to Abigail. "Thank you for all you've done for us." Stepping back, but keeping her hands on her arms, Abigail said, "You're welcome, sweetie. And I have one more thing to say." "I'm not sure I want to hear it," Ryan laughed. "You may not, but that won't stop me." Abigail joined her in laughing. "Here it is anyway. Don't discount the people the Lord brings into your life. All the circumstances in your life to this point had a reason. What if it was to lead you to someone special? Someone like Richard. Think about it." "Order up!" The shout startled her, making her jump. "I need to get back out there. She started towards where the food for her table was sitting under the warming lights, but turned back to Abigail first. "Thank you. I promise I'll think about it." As she hurried back out front, she considered what Abigail had said. Losing her husband so soon and so young didn't seem God-ordained. But then again, neither did the sin-filled world they lived in. She knew God could redeem any situation and turn it around for good. Maybe she needed to consider it all a bit more as she kept getting to know Richard again. He wasn't the same young boy she'd once known. Then again, she wasn't the same girl either. Life had changed them both. Maybe she needed to be a bit more open to a relationship with him, and she realized she was okay with that. More than okay.